Patricia Stark is a public speaking and communications coach with over 20 years' experience as a broadcaster, media trainer, corporate communications spokesperson, and sought-after speaker. Patricia Stark is now available to you on WRCR, covering topics to help you improve your communication skills and confidence inside and out.
Hello and welcome to Inside and Out with Patricia Stark. I am Patricia Stark. Wouldn't it be great to learn to have confidence at a young age? Napoleon Hill, the famous author of Think and Grow Rich and many other self-development books, stated that approximately 98% of adults lack confidence, enough so that it affects reaching goals and ultimately their success in life. So if you are the parent of a child, a teenager, if you have nieces and nephews, anyone that you would like to give a head start in the confidence department, today's show is for you. My guest is Dr. Thomas Nardi, and Dr. Nardi is a psychologist in private practice who specializes in cognitive behavior therapy. He's the director of the graduate counseling programs in school counseling and mental health counseling at Long Island University's campuses in Orangeburg and West Point. And we are so excited to have him here with us today. Dr. Nardi, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Good morning to you and to your listeners.
Good morning. So, Dr. Nardi, do you also teach for LIU as well as being the director of graduate counseling programs there?
Yes, I do. I'm the director of the school counseling and the mental health counseling programs, and I'm also one of the professors. I teach several graduate classes.
Okay. And can you describe for our listeners just what cognitive behavior therapy is?
Yes, so cognitive behavior therapy is a type of therapy that focuses on the connection between one's thoughts and thinking, belief, cognitions, and how that impacts the person's behaviors and emotions. So we feel that if a person has an emotion that they don't like, for example, a lack of self-confidence, it's going to be traced back to their thinking, that the thinking really determines how you feel, how you behave, what you do. So we put a lot of focus on the thoughts that people are having.
Okay. So why do you think that cultivating confidence at a young age is so important?
It's extremely important. One of the things we do know developmentally is that children, from the ages of pretty much from birth onward, the whole idea of being able to have confidence, you think, well, 1 to 3 years old, what type of confidence? Well, they start to develop just that bodily control. That gives them a sense of confidence that they can control themselves, like in bowel control or toilet training. As they get a little bit older, between 3 and 6, one of the theorists is a man named Erik Erikson. He talked about during that preschool period, 3 to 6 years old, the children struggle with the idea of initiative versus guilt. The initiative meaning that they can attempt new things, to try to learn new skills, or they feel guilty. And this is where the parents play a big role in it. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then finally, even when the kids start to get into school between the ages like 6 to 11, they struggle with this concept of either feeling competent or feeling inferior. That's the age when a lot of adolescents, pre-adolescents, are focusing on how they compare to other children. How competent are they? How their appearance, their skills, their abilities, and they compare themselves to others a lot. And through all of this, the parents, of course, has a very important, very crucial role in helping them to develop more confidence in themselves.
Okay. So you said that we would touch a little bit on the parents' role at that time. Yeah. So what are some of the top things that parents can do to help boost their child's confidence at all these different stages? And I'm assuming it might change depending on the stage.
Exactly. It changes in terms of the specifics, but the concept itself is always the same. The biggest influence on children growing up, by and large, are the parents, more so than their friends, more so than society. It's really the parental influence that is crucial, particularly in the early ages. And what happens is that some parents, they think that they're encouraging their children, but what they're really doing is discouraging them. And discouragement is a big confidence killer. And let me explain that a little bit more. The best way to build confidence in children is through communication. What do parents communicate? Some parents actually communicate a sense of, well, I think you can do this, but, and then they put in why they think the child can't. And children pick up not just on the words that are being said to them, they focus a lot on the parent's body language. So a parent might express confidence in the child, but the facial expression is, ooh, I don't think he's going to be able to do this.
Right.
So that's what becomes important. So the best way to really build confidence is for parents to focus not on praising the children. You might think, intuitively, if I praise my child, that's going to build a confidence. Actually, it could have the opposite effect. It's better to focus on not so much praise, but encouragement.
Yeah, because I had heard a statistic not that long ago that said, I might have even read it in Psychology Today, I think it actually was, where they talked about how kids that are constantly told, you're smart, you're smart, you're smart, actually will struggle because they'll think that things are supposed to come easy for them, because it's like, well, I'm smart, so I shouldn't have to work hard. So I'm guessing that it would be better to tell them, congratulations for work, I know you worked hard at that, rather than just reinforcing a generic that they're smart.
Exactly. You hit the key word right there. You're focusing on the effort. And that's where, if the child focuses on effort more than the actual accomplishment, there's no self-rating, there's no sense of like, wow, I'm good because I was able to do this. It's more like, I made the effort. That's what's important. And I just want to go back to what you just said, too. Now currently I'm only teaching for a graduate program, but at one point I was teaching for a college program. And they use the expression, the helicopter parents
yes.
who hover over their children. I've had college students who had like such an inflated sense of their own ability because the parents never let them deal with reality. The parents almost sheltered them and did so much for them. And they often think, I'm being a good parent, I'm protecting my child, I'm doing this for my child. No, you're not allowing the child to learn through adversity, learn through experience, learn through even making mistakes. That's the way to learn.
So tell us how we balance that. How do we back off, but also let our kids know that we care, that we are there for them, that we support them?
Yeah. Well, as I said earlier, in the cognitive behavioral approach, we focus on the cognitions. So the parent has to really be aware, what thoughts am I having? As a parent, what are my thoughts about my child? Some parents think that being a good parent means making sure the child never has any difficulties, making sure everything goes so smoothly. And they take away the child's ability to deal with adversity because they've overprotected the child.
Yeah.
Other times parents have almost vicariously trying to live through the child. So their expectation for the child is more like, this is what I would have wanted, and now my child is going to do it.
Right, yes, and you see that a lot, especially in the entertainment industry, which I work in quite a bit. So let's talk a little bit about some of these stages. So you mentioned some of the earlier stages. Let's go through a list of some do's and don'ts through the early stages. So let's start with, like, I think you mentioned it was preschool till what age did you get to? And then you said something between another age and 11.
Yeah, okay, let's look at that. For example, a very young child, perhaps for the first time trying to put on their shoes, and they put them on the wrong feet. So the parent might say, oh, you got them on the wrong feet, or the parent might say, oh, that's good, you got them on. I wonder if it would be more comfortable if you switched them around. You're not like discouraging the child, you're not deflating their sense of, wow, look what I've done. At the same time, you're not saying, hey, that's great, you got them on the wrong feet, your feet are going to hurt all day. You kind of build in correcting, but doing it in a constructive way, where the child is not made to feel like I'm not good enough, or I can't do this, or I'm never going to learn to do this. Or sometimes the parents, they get a little frustrated. It's taking my child too long to get the shoes on. Let me just put them on for him. And that's kind of like a disservice for the child. The child's not learning to deal with that.
So you should always frame correction in a positive way. I think that I heard a couple of times throughout my career with different things, whether it was trying to take classes to learn a little bit more about psychology to help me with my clients, or reading books. And I've often heard that we're not supposed to phrase things in don't run into the street, or don't do this, or don't do that, because all they ultimately hear is run through the street, or they actually hear the opposite of what you're saying. So help us understand how we should phrase our questions or our requests to them when we are asking them to not do something.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that the less rules that a parent imposes on the child, the better. But the rules that you do have should be rules that are really important. Some parents get too caught up in a perfectionism, so they expect the child to be perfect in so many different ways. it's better, as you said, the more issues related more to safety. No, you can't run out into the street. That's safety. So it's like really determining what are your expectations for the child, what are the rules that you want to have imposed upon the child, and then being able to really, even with very young children, kind of explain, if you run in, I worry when you run out towards the street because you might get hurt very seriously. So you're kind of telling the child why the rule is there. Mm-hmm. So you want to focus on correcting the child, and you're very right on that. You want to correct the child in a positive way. And that's part of, again, the idea of encouraging rather than just praising. Encouraging, focusing on their assets, focusing on their strengths, focusing on building more, not just self-confidence, but even self-acceptance. The understanding, I don't have to be perfect. I do need to follow some rules for my own safety.
Mm-hmm. Let's delve a little bit deeper into this encouragement versus discouragement type of situation here. From what I'm getting from hearing you is that it should always be done in an encouraging way. I'm guessing that discouragement is never a good tactic.
Well, it's never a good tactic, but again, talking about perfectionism, as a parent, you may not always do the right thing. You have to be tolerant of your own imperfections. Oh, you know what?
Yes.
Would have been better had I not said it that way, but I did. And sometimes even saying to your child, perhaps saying to your daughter, Mommy was a little bit angry then, and I said it the wrong way. What I really wanted to say to you was this. Almost like to not be afraid of correcting yourself with your child.
Yes, yes. So let's list a couple of the top confidence boosters at any of these stages that we could give for our kids.
Right. Okay. The main thing is really to focus on, again, the praise idea, focusing on their effort. Not like, hey, that was a good job because you got an A, but more like, that was good that you studied so hard. Mm-hmm. You put a lot of effort into that.
Yes.
Reflecting to the child, I bet you feel good about that grade.
Yeah.
So focusing on that. And the opposite side of that is the confidence killer. I've had many patients over the years who've said when they were growing up, if they came home with a 98, the parents would say either, what happened to the other 2 points?
Uh-huh.
Clearly indicating, well, you're not good
Yikes,
enough.
Yes.
Or the message would be, well, I guess the exam wasn't all that hard if you got a 90.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And these are things that parents say, and it's really hurtful. So adults talking to me now, reflecting back on something that happened 30, 40, 25 years ago, still remember very clearly, wow, this is what I was told.
Yeah, I guess we carry that stuff around like luggage. parents really can have a lasting impact for all of our lives, what our experiences are growing up.
Exactly. And what's really bad about that, too, Patty, is that then it carries over to your own children. It's almost like a lot of adults get concerned when they realize, wow, I'm repeating what my mother said, or I'm repeating what my father said, and not in a positive way, but in a very negative, wow, I'm doing the same thing to my child that my parents did to me.
But it's probably easy to fall into that trap because it's what you know.
Exactly. It's what you know, and that's why, again, it's so important at an early age to work on the children to get their thinking to the point where they can think for themselves and evaluate doing something because it makes them feel not worthwhile, but because it gives them satisfaction. In other words, not like there's an external goal. See, praise focuses on an external goal, like I'm worthwhile because I accomplished X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. Encouragement focuses more on I feel good about myself because I made an effort.
Right. So at what age, when we were talking about those stages, at what age can we kind of start to pass that baton and give our child ways that they can create and cultivate their own confidence?
Yeah, it's actually literally from birth. The child is never too young to start to have positive affirmations from the parent, positive thinking from the parent. Again, not praise, but the encouragement. So it's always good. And a lot of it really comes down to the word that's used a lot in your field. I'm sure you see this with your clients. The whole idea of communicating, being able to communicate correctly, communicate effectively. So it's the effective communication between the parent and the child.
Yeah. So give us some examples of great ways to start up communications and keep the lines of communications open with your children.
Yeah. One thing that I encourage families to do is to have a family meeting once a week where they really sit down and just talk about what's happening within the family. Not to complain, not to gripe about things, not to criticize, but just to focus on positive things that the family might be doing, planning a vacation, planning a weekend, whatever it is. It's a chance to people to sit together, parent and child together, almost like on an equal level, just to discuss what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Another way is for parents to show an interest in the child's day, not by saying, "Did you have a good day?" but "Tell me about your day."
Yes.
More open-ended questions.
Yeah, to get them talking, not to just say, "Yeah, it was all right." What changed today? I like to ask my son, just so that he has something to grab on. Well, what was different today?
Yeah, what was different today? Tell me something funny that happened in school today. Tell me something in school that really made everyone go, "Oh, wow." You focus on that. And there's certain things, too, like encouragement. You use words or phrases like, "I like the way you handled that," or, "I appreciate what you've just done," or, "I know you can handle this." You're trying to focus on the child's having a positive expectation, not unrealistic, but focusing on what they can be able to do.
Yes. So let's lead us through the stages of what the expectations should be from the parents. What stages are kids really capable of being a good listener or trying to control their impulses more? I think that lots of times we get caught up in thinking that our kids can think the way that we do as adults because they seem mature, they seem like they speak well, and I think that many times, myself included, we forget that maybe they're just not capable of these expectations that we have because they're not adults yet. So maybe give us an idea of what can we expect them to be able to handle at certain stages.
Yeah. One of the things I like to tell parents is that I like to make a distinction between a child who won't do something versus a child who can't do something. Sometimes parents think, well, my child just won't cooperate, won't do this. And it may not really be the case. It may really be that neurologically they're not mature enough to do certain things or to process certain things. So it's almost like giving the child, as you said, they're not miniature adults. They're not thinking the way adults think. So it's really having that awareness. And rather than say, by this age or this point, they should be able to do something, because that gets some parents more into this perfectionism. Whoa, it's like, okay, the child is now this many years and months old, so this is what I'm expecting. It's better to try to meet the child at the child's own level and understand that there's a lot of variation in what's happening. One thing that parents sometimes do, and this is a confidence killer, is to compare siblings. Well, your sister can do this, or when your sister was your age, she did that. That's very destructive.
Or even saying, at my age, I could do this. Why can't my child do this at that age?
There's a famous joke about that, too, where a fellow was saying to his son, when Abraham Lincoln was your age, he had written 3 books. And the son says, yeah, and he was your age, he was president. So,
very good. Touché.
Yeah.
All right, good. So let's talk about this whole concept of overconfidence. Is it really possible to be overconfident?
Yes, it is. And here's what starts to happen. Some children, again, we're going back to the early ages, like they're 3 to 6 years old. They take the initiative. They try to do new things. And sometimes that's where it can almost be a little dangerous. They're a little overconfident in their abilities. They've seen a parent, for example, using scissors. Well, I think I can do that too. Well, they really can't. So it's like overconfident in that way, where you want to get them the plastic scissors where they can't get hurt, and you try to focus on showing them how to do it without discouraging them, without criticizing them. The overconfidence becomes a little different as they get older. That's when people, and I know you work with people, preparing people for you're a career coach and life coach. Sometimes people go on job interviews and they really walk in thinking like, I should have this, because who wouldn't want to hire me? That overconfidence, and that it's a real turnoff to the employer.
But that really, wouldn't you then now label that as cockiness, as arrogance?
Well, but what is that really? It's like they're so overconfident. Again, a little humorous thing, like someone said, well, yeah, for a reference, I'll list myself as a reference for me, like who's a better reference for me than myself? It's like that focusing too much, like an overly inflated view of what they think they can do. And a lot of that, again, it's the parents going to the extreme where they just praise rather than encourage. So that they have the child believing that they're much more competent than they really are.
Yeah. So let's replace praise with always being as encouraging as possible, and reward for effort.
Yeah, there was a study that came out a few years back among college students where most of them felt if they just showed up for most of the classes, not for all, but for most of the classes, they should automatically get at least a B. And that's without, exams or anything. That was just that sense, almost like an entitlement that comes from this overconfidence. And in fact, some researchers are concerned because along with this overconfidence and this narcissism, there's like a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding of other people's emotions and feelings.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and oftentimes I wonder if this overconfidence, or at least in my experience when I see people who are overconfident or cocky, usually it's a mask because they're overcompensating because deep down inside they really don't know if they're good enough or capable enough.
Exactly, and that goes back again, not to blame the parents, but it goes back to the early stages with the parents. What message have the parents given the child? A lot of times people give their children the message, you're only good enough if you're accomplishing something or if you're meeting my expectations.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about confident communication skills. So what are some things that you recommend to help parents suggest to their children ways that they can communicate better with their peers and with the adults that they're interacting with as far as eye contact, manners, interpersonal skills, etc.?
Okay. The best way for parents to do that is by role modeling. Too frequently, parents will tell a child, behave a certain way, but then when they look at the parent's doing the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Parents will encourage their children, for example, I want you to make sure you put all your toys away and keep everything neat. But then the child looks and sees the parents, and the parents are just like not so neat. They're not so tidy.
Yeah.
It becomes more destructive when parents are telling children, well, don't fight with your friends, don't get angry. And then the child is in the car with the parent, and someone cuts the parent off, and the parent has a little road rage incident. And the child is looking at that. What am I going to listen to? What my parent is telling me or what my parent is showing me? So a lot of it is really role modeling. And if it's like the parents speak to the child with respect, the children learn to speak back with respect, to treat other people with respect. So the idea of the eye contact and being polite, the parents really role model that every day, not just when they sit down and explain to the child, but on a constant, consistent basis. A parent is a role model for the child, for good or for bad. The child is really going to copy and imitate what they witness.
So that mirroring is enormously important. If you are stressed out or if you are angry or lack patience or any number of these things, is this what we're instilling in our kids?
Exactly. I like the word you just used. You're a mirror for the child. The child is looking at you, and what the child is seeing is what the child is going to be mirroring.
Okay, so that's really important because they're like a sponge, I suppose. They're just going to soak it all in. And all right. So what can we do about outside influences? It may be toxic friends, maybe bullying. There's a lot of stuff that these kids are encountering today that I know that we all had, but now there seems to be so many more layers with social media and technology and all those other things. How can we help them to have confidence in the midst of a lot of external things that are really going to test their confidence?
Yeah, it goes back again to the message that the parent is conveying to the child. If the child learns to be more self-pleasing, self-accepting, that you're doing something not for an external praise, not to impress other people, but for yourself, then you learn to care a little bit less about what other people think. You focus more on how you feel and what you think. So if a child is being bullied or being picked on, the child needs to be able to communicate that to the parent, of course, and sometimes the parent needs to really deal with that at the school level. But at the same time, for the child to say, okay, I'm being bullied, but I don't have to feel badly about myself. I can recognize that the bully is someone who has a problem. I don't have to internalize that. And the way to not internalize it, again, is to have parents from early on conveying to the child a sense of self-acceptance, feeling good about yourself with your imperfections, with your highs and with your lows. St. Augustine had an expression once that the perfect is the enemy of the good. You want your child to understand the good within himself or herself, not perfect, because perfect doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I think that's really important because there's a lot of perfectionism issues and problems out there, and it's just not possible. No one is perfect.
Exactly. And sometimes the parents have that expectation. And again, children internalize the expectations of their parents very quickly.
Yeah. So let's cut some parents some slack here, too, because I know that we keep going back to that. Obviously, they make a big impact on their kids. I mean, that's without a doubt based on so much of what you've said today. But how do we balance so many things? Because parents, as I mentioned at the top of the show, adults lack confidence and don't, have that inner critic, and they're dealing with struggles in their life, and maybe work is tough and there's money issues and there's all these other things that they're dealing with when they're trying to raise this human being and do a good job at it, but yet they lose patience, they get frustrated, they get overwhelmed. How do we juggle all of that?
Yeah, and again, that goes back to the idea of the thinking. What thoughts are going through the parent's head? If the parent is thinking, I have to be perfect with my child, there are no perfect parents. It's understanding, okay, sometimes I'm going to mess up. I'm not always going to be in the best mood. I'm not always going to communicate effectively with my child. However, I can always go back and revisit that with my child. So, you know what? Mommy was a little bit stressed out yesterday. I had a rough day at work. I spoke to you. I was a little bit too angry when I spoke to you. So let's just talk about that. How were you feeling when I said that? Oh, well, Mommy, my feelings were hurt. Well, I apologize. So it's being able to focus on your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own emotions, and then not setting a standard for yourself, which is unrealistic. If you think you're going to be the perfect parent, well, you're going to try to raise the perfect child. If you accept yourself as a human being, you're fallible, you're going to have your shortcomings, you do the best you can do, it's not perfect, that's what's going to convey to the child also.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And now that we're on to the adult avenue here, I'm sure that there's a lot of parents and just adults in general thinking about their experiences growing up as children and what may have influenced their confidence or lack of based on the way that they were raised by their parents.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I deal with so often with my clients is this inner critic. And everybody, as far as I've seen, people that are extremely successful, celebrities, models, wealthy entrepreneurs, you name it, that I've had in my room that many times break down and cry when they're out of their comfort zone and they are trying something new because they're putting so much pressure on themselves. And I know you're going to talk about probably this perfectionism again, but how can people in general help to try to not take direction from this inner critic? Yeah,
it really goes back to, again, this whole cognitive behavioral idea. It traces back to the 1st century A.D. Stoic philosopher Epictetus. He said that people are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of those things. It's not, when you're out of your comfort zone, it's not being out of the comfort zone, but it's what you tell yourself about being out of your comfort zone. So much of how we function really depends on the message that we give to ourselves. So if a person is really struggling, is it because they're demanding some type of perfection from themselves? I know you do a lot of coaching, so someone, you said they'll break down, they'll cry. They've never done that before. They're out of their comfort zone. But if they can say to themselves, I'm out of my comfort zone, it's okay to struggle with this. Yes. I can't demand that I be perfect with it. They'll feel a lot better.
Yeah. I wish I remember who said it, but I remember there's a quote that says, one of the most important things you'll ever hear is what you say to yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, what you really want to do with people is get them to the parents, to the child, to yourself even, recognize what message are you giving yourself? What is it that you really are telling yourself? And a lot of times we're not even aware of our self-talk.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left. Dr. Nardi, how could people reach you if they would like to learn more about your services or your classes?
Yeah. Well, I can, if they're interested in more information about the program, they're free to email me at Thomas, THOMAS.Nardi, NARDI, at liu.edu. I'll repeat that, Thomas, THOMAS.Nardi, NARDI, at liu.edu. It's a graduate program in counseling. And if they have any questions about anything that was discussed on your show today, they're free to contact me that way.
And do you still do family counseling in your private practice?
I do still have some individual counseling, some family counseling, some couple counseling. I'm still involved with that to a certain extent, yes.
All right, great. And then in just the last couple minutes that we have, perhaps leave our listeners with some advice or some suggestions or tools on keeping that communication, that line of communication open in the family setting.
Yeah. I think one thing to do, again, is to be kind to yourself, to recognize you're not always going to hit it out of the ballpark. Sometimes you're going to strike out, but you keep trying. And that's the message you give to yourself. That's the message that gets conveyed to your children. And not to be afraid to go back to your child and revisit something that may have been said that you kind of regret having said, to be able to focus on that. And again, to realize that being a parent is an awesome responsibility. It's a lot of pressure. There are no manuals that come with it.
Right.
There's no training program to do ahead of time. So a lot of it is kind of learning on the job.
Yes, absolutely. Very good point. Well, Dr. Thomas Nardi, we are so happy that you could join us today. It was
Thank you for inviting me.
Great show, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. And that wraps up another edition of Inside and Out with Patricia Stark. Make it a great day.